Okay, welcome back to Stories with Steve. The name of this video is A Story of Romance and Destruction. All right, so this takes place in the late 90s era on Alton Avenue in front of the Homie Coffee building, right? If you know, you know. Free coffee, he should be free soon. But anyway, so the main character of this story, right, is a guy from Pelham Parkway. He's cool. He's from the Pelham Projects. He went to school with a lot of guys from Allerton, especially Allerton and Wallace. So he knows everybody. He's cool with everybody. He's cool with everybody on his block. He's cool with people on my block. He's a cool dude, right? For the most part. Now he got it where he bagged this sexy, cute, young Dominican chick, right? You know what I mean? Maybe even a model looking chick, video vixen looking chick, right? Now, usually when he comes see her, he comes over dolo and there's never no issues. But this day, he made a bad decision. Now, he decided to bring two of his homeboys, who unfortunately happen to be weirdos, right? So, while he's upstairs getting his groove on with his lady, as he should, right? He unbeknownst to him, while his two homeboys are outside, I guess they're getting bored. And like I said, they're weirdos. So one of these dudes or both of these dudes see a young Puerto Rican girl and say some weird, perverted R. Kelly type stuff to the girl, right? Now, I don't know if they, on their block they did this and there was no repercussions. Nobody ever called them out on it or whatever the case may be. But this little girl runs into the building. Now she goes into the building, right? And she tells her father, but her father is chilling with the super, right? And a large Cuban man who happens to have a 2x4 for some reason. And to give you a description of this dude's like well over 6 feet tall. It looks like he lifts weights and eats steroids for breakfast, right? Got a large slash on his face. Looks kind of like a dangerous guy. And he's cool with her father and he's cool with the super. Now, the super now, right, at this point in time, he was a kind of street, kind of not street kind of guy. And he didn't really have a real liking for guys from Pelham Parkway for some reason, right? But so the little girl, she comes, she tells her father what the guy said, right? That he said some weird old pervert kind of stuff to her, and she felt uncomfortable and she felt threatened. Like any father would feel, the father gets angry. He's like, where are these guys at? Right? And she had told him they're like in front of the building, either sitting on the steps or directly in front of the building or maybe near that little corner store. So the father, the super, and the gigantic Cuban man with the 2x4 and a slash on his face go outside. And these guys happen to be wearing very bright colors, so it was kind of hard not to see them. You know what I mean? And the little girl pointed them out, right? So she points them out and says, well, those are the guys. But they're so busy, these two guys, joking around with each other or whatever, that they don't know what's coming. They don't know that they just been identified by the little girl that they said the weirdo stuff to, and that danger is arising. Like, there's no natural instinct that these guys have to know that something bad about to happen. So they chit chat, not knowing what's about to go down. Now here come the girl father, the super, and the giant Cuban dude with the slash on his face. Right? They come over there, they approached him, and said, yo, what you said to my daughter? And one of these idiots turns around and goes, yeah, I said it. And what you going to do about it? Now, he thought because he had an affiliation, this somehow made him impenetrable to an ass whooping, which we all know whatever your affiliation, non-affiliation, whatever, don't mean things can't happen to you. And something happened to him. So what ends up happening is he says that father swings, Super gets involved, the other guy that's with him gets involved. But you got 3 street dudes who, in their 40s, late 40s, who've been fighting most of their life. And one of them is a gigantic dude, and he's got a 2x4. You got these other guys who are like young men, somewhere between their late teen years and their early 20s, right? Who are used to more or less jumping people. Not really fighting one-on-one fights, never mind against older dudes who are in pretty good shape, who've been fighting for the last 2 decades of their lives, right? So now these 2 guys are getting their ass whooped. They're getting pummeled. They're getting beat, into silly putty. You know what I'm saying? They're on the floor getting stomped out, hit by 2x4s, hit with feet, this, that, and the third, right? And, back in those days, nobody really, let's say, would report anything. So nobody's calling, the police to help or nothing. And people heard what happened. So they're like, hey, these guys said some weirdo stuff to a little girl. They get their butt whipped, maybe they'll learn not to do it again. So they out there getting the beating of their life, right? Yelling help, whatever, right? But homeboy, he doesn't know what's going on. He's up there with his girl, getting his little move and groove on, and right, maybe dancing to a little bachata, you know what I mean? Drinking some Brugal or something, having a good old time. But his homeboys is out there, these dudes are doing bachata dances on their face, salsa dances on their face. They doing an Irish river dance on their face. They're break dancing on their face. So his 2 friends out there, getting demolished and stuff. Total destruction. So by the time he finishes whatever he's doing and he decides to come outside the building, the father, the Super, the giant Cuban dude, they went home or left or went to the bar or whatever. He comes out. There's 2 puddles where his friends have been. The ambulance picked them up and, bring them to ice up their bruises and I guess maybe get some x-rays or something. And all he sees is 2 puddles where his homeboys would have been and has no idea what goes on. And he later finds out what happened and everything. But that's a crazy story of, romance and destruction happening at the same time, And it also, people should learn, you got to watch who you hang around with, right? Because sometimes people have weird habits that you don't know about. And they can get themselves into trouble, or maybe get you into trouble. So watch who you hang out with. Make sure you ain't hanging out with weirdos. And that's the end of this story with Steve.